and maybe I missed it, so I don't want to blanket this, but I did not see any call outs in terms of API functionality or anything that would connect. So to your point, Andy, it does very much seem as though what you see is what you get. Maybe that is not the case and I just didn't see it.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm, Elevate IQ. There will always be a divide in opinions about who should lead the design of business software. CPAs argue that CPAs design the best software. The manufacturing packages designed by shop floor owners tend to argue that they design the best manufacturing packages. The firms started by software engineers and architects might be perceived as disconnected from the needs of business users. Like it or not, software design fundamentals still matter, and most standard packages that scale follow the core software engineering and database design fundamentals. So where does BizAutomation stand? In today's episode, we invited a panel of industry experts for a live discussion on LinkedIn to conduct an independent review of BizAutomation ERP capabilities. We covered many grounds, including their strength in their design and architecture. We also covered their weaknesses, such as their infrastructure and documentation. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday. And we have been meeting for what now? Like 2 years right now, guys?
Something like that.
Right.
So I know when we first started doing this, I was much younger and much better looking.
Yeah, and you had hairs as well, if I
had
recall,
hair, yeah.
right? Yeah, I remember that. So it's been 40 years since we have been doing this episode, guys. In the pre-internet era, as we all know, we could do YouTube. So we always have a lot of fun, and today is going to be very special because we have a very special tool here called BizAutomation. Not sure how many people have heard of it, but this is obviously be special. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. And if you don't know me, I am your host, Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent the technology strategy consulting firm. On that note, I am going to move to Dave for his intro.
Thanks, Sam. Hey, everybody. My name is Dave Chrysler, and I own an operations consulting business working with leaders in manufacturing and distribution, helping them to optimize process and systemize their business. Come to you with more than 20 years of experience in operations, which included various roles and several ERP implementations, and excited to be here with everyone. Thanks for having me.
Of course, Dave, and that's always quite an experience dealing operations for 20 years. You can learn so much.
That's back when I used to have hair too. So
Compared to me, Dave, you're a hippie.
Hey, thank you so much for being here, Dave. Andy, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you for inviting me. My name's Andy Pratico. I've been involved in ERP software for manufacturers all my life, more or less. I've worked all over North America, and I've helped over 1,000 manufacturers in my career. And I've written a book on how to evaluate and how to uncover the truth about ERP software. Hopefully it's useful for some folks out there. Thank you so much, Sam.
Certainly going to be useful, Andy. Thank you so much for being here. By the way, on hair jokes, they always work. I wish I could do them as well. Um, one of the advantages, I guess, right? Everything is going to have a pro. In any case, if you are in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you guys post your questions in comments. We typically try to cover them in the show. If we run out of time, we will make sure that you receive your answers. On that note, guys, I'm going to start on the quick briefing. Unless Andy, you have any other jokes that you want to share?
If you want me to tell you a joke, I'll tell you a joke.
Yeah, tell me, Andy. Tell me.
Well, there's these two strings, and they walk into a bar, and the bartender says, "We don't serve strings. Get out!" He boots them in the butt, and they go out the door. The one string talks to his buddy. He says, "I'm not putting up with that. I'm gonna go back in there. Watch this. I'm gonna muss up my hair and tie myself into a sheep shank." And he walks back in. He goes, the bartender says, "Ain't you a string?" He goes, "I'm afraid not."
Oh, Andy.
Andy's jokes are always funny.
Sam, you're going to have to freshen up on these dad jokes, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I definitely need to do that.
Well, I got lots of them.
Yeah. We can probably have a deck for that as well. Oh my goodness. In any case, guys, so let's start with the briefing. So this one, BizAutomation. And by the way, before we start, let's touch on some of the things that we have been seeing in many different tools. And one of the trends that I have been talking about, okay, there is always going to be a little bit of trend when you look at these tools. When a tool is going to be designed by the software architects or the developers, that's going to have very interesting layers, very different layers, in fact. Okay, when you are going to have a tool that is going to be designed by, let's say, the shop floor owners, okay, it's going to have very specific attributes, the way the screens are going to be designed. Okay, if you are going to have an accountant designing a software, then they are going to have very specific attributes in that software. You will see how the software is going to be designed. And we have seen this in the case of, let's say, if you compare BizAutomation and overall in terms of where BizAutomation stand in general, it is going to be in that QuickBooks space. This is going to be more of the stopgap solution when the companies are trying to grow from QuickBooks Zero accounting software, not necessarily an ERP software, and they don't really have, let's say, the skill set or the budget for the implementation of a real ERP system. The real ERP system is going to be something like NetSuite, Acumatica, the lower mid-market or the smaller ones, I would say, right? So these ERP systems sort of fit in between the way they are designed. In general, when you are going to look for any of these ERP systems, especially if they are going to sit on top of QuickBooks, they are not going to have as much modeling done. And when I say modeling, meaning the data is not going to be as mapped to provide the traceability that you are going to get from the real ERP systems, okay? And I don't know where you draw the line in terms of real versus non-real, but the point I'm trying to make is the more nested your data is going, the more embedded your data is going to be. And data could be your customers, vendors, item, unit of measures, all of these things. And they are going to have the layers and layers and layers of hierarchy overall from the data perspective. So typically, if a software engineer or the architect is going to design a software, they are going to have far superior in terms of the data modeling, okay, because they are familiar with the relational database concepts. They understand these things really well. So this is probably going to be one of those systems where you are going to hear good things, at least from me, why I like this particular software, even though it is not going to be as mainstream. But at the same time, the con is going to be that the data is not going to be as flat. Sometimes the business users are going to feel that it's not as friendly, because this does require, number one, learning, number two, understanding how the data is going to be modeled. So you require far deeper implementation expertise in general. Your data needs to be aligned with the data model of the software. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And that's where the real problem is. If you look at the space, they are not going to have as much licensing budget. They are also not going to have as much implementation budget in general. So it's tricky to work in that space. And that's why I find that, if you are looking at any of the QuickBooks add-ons, even though the data may not be modeled as well, but there is a place for even those software. So in this particular case, it might be tricky to buy this one because then you would require the same implementation experience. And if you don't have that, you might struggle with this software, even though this is going to be slightly superior in terms of the design. You might get far more from the tool, but it's going to be far harder to learn for the businesses that might not have a controller, a CFO, an operations manager. For the most part, these companies are probably going to be founder led, and they don't necessarily have as much formal education or the experience in the supply chain management, in the operations management, as well as accounting. Any comments so far, guys?
No, I think you're dead on, Sam.
Okay, amazing. So let's move on. The other things that you are going to notice here is one of the things that you will always hear in the community, especially when you are talking to these smaller vendors. They are going to claim that the bigger vendors are greedy. Okay, period. That's how they like to position themselves, that bigger vendors are charging a lot of money in general. Okay, but here's what I like to think personally. Okay, there is no free lunch in general. Okay, you are never going to have free lunch, so you need to figure out where where these guys are trying to save money. Okay, what are you going to lose? And I think if you find those answers, then you will have a real insight in terms of what you are getting from this tool. And obviously everybody cuts corner somewhere when they are trying to sell something cheap, because at the end of the day, these guys need to hire the software developers, they need to have the R&D, they need to have the sales team, so they are paying people. Okay, and people don't work for free. So there has to be something. And again, the profit margins of these enterprise software vendors, it's not that they are making like 50% of the profit margins. Sure, they might have a little bit more overhead just because they are larger companies. I get it. But the overhead is not going to be as much as that. You can sell the software for like 30%, 40% discount or whatever. So again, what I'm trying to say here is do your research, understand the costing model, how the business model is structured, and why they are able to make this money. And we are going to touch in this particular episode as well why these guys are able to save that money, where they have cut the corners, and some of those could be the red flags depending upon where you are in your journey, and depending upon how much the red flag is going to be, I guess. And I don't know, I'm not able to find the proper sentence there, I guess. Anything else, guys, before I move on to these slides?
No, I think
No, go ahead,
as
Sam.
Andy
Let's
said,
look at the slides.
you're pretty much nailing it from my perspective. I mean, the things, I know we'll probably get into it a bit later, but one of the comments that back to your point about how some of the smaller solutions position themselves and position some of the larger solutions. Anybody that has had experience in really any of the systems, one of the best places to look for is any of the help documentation. It's an often overlooked area. And a lot of the larger systems have significant documentation libraries that you can go in and research that functionality, search out previous use cases. And I think we've talked about this before, but I think that's the real benefit when you start to look at the larger solutions versus the smaller solutions. There's pluses and minuses of both, but the larger the solution, the larger of a pool of use cases that they're pulling from to create process infrastructure. And I think that's really something that needs to be looked at. You can make a case, I think, regarding, regardless of where your business is at, for a solution that you're looking for. But those are some of the big considerations, and why it's not as easy to just dismiss. Oh, larger solution, they're making a boatload of money. To your point, Sam, in most cases that money is being spent in support and infrastructure to make sure that it's kind of best in class. Best practices. Yeah. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I could not agree more. I think there is a layer that I want to touch on in your commentary, Dave, that might not be obvious to the buyers. And one of which is going to be if the help documentation is going to be open or not. And when I say open, meaning you should be able to Google the help documentation. The documentation should be available on public link. If it is not available, then what it means is it's probably going to be a very closed system in general. And there are only so many vendors that publish
their documentation on a public link. And that also is going to speak for how sophisticated their consulting network is. Because if the product is going to be supported by the consulting community, then they would require a lot more documentation. The product company needs to make sure that the documentation is going to be as well done as product. And if the product is going to be supported by the OEM, since it is being supported by the internal company, it's the documentation does not go through the same revision cycle. The reason for that is because nobody's really challenging. It's a very tribal knowledge that the OEM is maintaining it themselves, and they might not even know, to be honest, that the documentation is not as well done. But typically, the products that are going to be supported by the consulting community, because they are literally reading the documentation to be able to use the product, and you, as the customer, need the documentation as well. So it's the same documentation that the customer is using as well as the consultants are using. So it needs to be on a public link. So great comment, Dave. Okay, if there are no follow-up comments, then I'll go to the slides. And here, we were looking at the costs, and one of the areas where these companies are going to cut the corners is going to be in terms of the data center. Okay, the data center quality is probably should be the first criteria that you should be looking at. Okay, where the software is deployed. If it is going to be deployed on Amazon, Google, Microsoft, I'm not going to suggest that I am any biased towards any bigger corporations, but at the same time, when you are looking at the infrastructure, it needs to have the SLA, it needs to have the skill set, it needs to have the expertise, it needs to have so many different things, and those so many different things are very, very, very okay. Typically, if you look at the SaaS licensing, the way the pricing works for any of the SaaS offerings, I would say 50% of the licensing cost, or maybe 33%, goes to cloud providers. That's how expensive it is.
Yeah, about 35%. You're right, Sam.
Right? And it is not the software companies that are making this money. Okay? It is the infrastructure company. And by the way, it's not the infrastructure company that are making this money. They also need to pay for the software licenses that they are using. And sometimes they are going to be using thousands and thousands of software underneath to be able to run these workloads. They require all of that. Okay? That's where the money goes. Now you need that. Okay? You cannot cut down on that expertise, because otherwise your security is going to be compromised. Your backup is going to be compromised. You are hiring interns to do these things which are mission critical for your workload. Okay? That's where the real risk is. So when you are looking at a mom and pop data center company, it could be tricky. Okay? If you are deploying, let's say, a telecom phone system or whatever on those data centers, no big deal, guys. You can still do that. Okay? The maximum what could happen is your phone is going to be down. That's okay. You can probably have a backup phone or whatever. Okay? But with ERP, okay, when your customer data is going to be on these data centers, it's a critical issue. That's why you need to pay attention to this. Dave, you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I was just going to add a bit to that. I mean, because, I know we've touched on this and maybe some other solutions, but, this one is so specific in terms of positioning from a cloud perspective and calls out its data center. I mean, one of the things that I was involved with was not an ERP, but it was a workflow related cloud deployment. And one of the things that I found dealing with that is, there's a lot of conversation around, we, offer 99%, 99.9% uptime and those types of things. And what the conversation really needs to center around is what the catastrophic backup plan is in the event of a data center collapse. That could be due to a number of things, but how is not just that data, so in this case, your ERP data backed up, how is that then transmitted to, an offsite location, and what length of time do they anticipate to be back up and fully functioning? It's not so much the kind of 99.9% uptime for regularly scheduled maintenance and those types of things. To your point, Sam, it's when these catastrophic types of events happen, guess what? You can't write orders up. Guess what? You can't invoice orders. You might not be able to ship your orders. You might not be able to apply, payments for your orders. So this is, potentially crippling to a business. So there needs to be real conversation around it. And again, I've been involved in a solution that did cripple production due to some downtime issues and not having, a well thought out backup plan. And that happened to be a situation where there were redundancy in offsite locations. There were some other issues that were impacting connectivity and kind of uptime functionality. So it's a conversation and needs to be backed up with some real use cases, talking to other customers, finding out what's really happening with the connectivity and potential catastrophic, backup.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this Alchemy Communications in Irvine, California, but I assume they're not that big. Using your Azure or AWS, there is cost involved, but that cost is reinvested back into helping every one of their customers regarding exactly what Dave's talking about. Catastrophic failures. And it's like everybody says about insurance. Insurance is a terrible deal until your house burns down.
Yeah.
Exactly, guys. Great points, guys, and great joke, Andy, always. One thing that I would like to touch is I always like to understand the cost model for any company, okay? So mission critical workload, obviously backing up the workloads in general is a very traditional IT procedure in which they might be able to probably perform, just because most IT companies are designed to sort of bring back the workload. But where exactly are they going to cut the corners is always my question. Okay, when you look at these smaller IT companies, in most cases they are probably not going to have as great licensing. Probably they are going to be buying the software that is not going to be as well patched. They are probably going to be cutting down in terms of the resources as well. So that those are some of the real security risks in general. And when you are going to have a real security incident, then your mom and pop IT company might not be able to save. The reason for that is because they might not have as a strong security infrastructure as a large company is going to have. So again, what I really like to understand is, okay, if these guys are able to offer at much lower price, okay, what are the reasons? The other reasons could be that they are trying to shove a lot more workload on a system, okay? If you do that, then obviously your speed is going to be down. It's not going to be as efficient as some of these other workloads. So obviously your performance is going to be impacted. So that is the other layer that you should be thinking. Again, think about where this company is going to cut the corners. If they are able to sell for lower, why? Okay, is the question always. That's what you should be asking. So here they are making one more comment that one version prevents upsell and hidden add-ons. But at the same time, you also need to think that, okay, here they are able to offer a lot more functionality out of the box. That could be a good thing because you don't have to worry about the add-ons, the third-party vendors. But at the same time, you also need to think about that, some of this functionality is better off provided by the vendors, okay? And that is going to be the non-critical functionality. The non-critical functionality is going to be in terms of EDI, okay, the iPaaS, the integrations, the sales access. What else am I missing here? AP automation. Okay, that's not a core ERP functionality. So the more options you have there, the better it is. And typically those options are probably not going to be available with these systems. So add-ons matter. You should not be buying add-ons for the mission critical functionality, but you should always buy add-on for the functionality that is not going to be as critical, that is not going to impact your master data, that is not going to impact your core workflows overall, and that is not going to compromise the state of the data model of the ERP system. So add-ons also have a place, but these guys this is a great sales pitch. Hey, you know what? I'm giving you one version that is going to prevent the upsell and hidden add-ons. Yes, that is great, but that's a minus as well.
Well, it says like you're saying, Sam, one version prevents upsells and add-ons. I assume what they're presenting is that their one price, whatever it is, gets the whole system, whatever that is. But that does paint you into a corner, because if that one system doesn't do everything you need, or if there's functionality that are unique to your company, now, unless you're using APIs to somehow link it in, you're going to be painted into a corner.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to add to that, Sam, before you jumped in. I did not see, I did poke around their website. I did not see any, and maybe I missed it, so I don't want to blanket this, but I did not see any call outs in terms of API functionality or anything that would connect. So to your point, Andy, it does very much seem as though what you see is what you get.
Right.
Maybe that is not the case, and I just didn't see it. But go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, guys, and just one point there, just because you have APIs are great because obviously they are hiding the technical boilerplate. But, APIs are not supposed to integrate magically. Okay, each integration could be $1 million. Okay,
right.
and so you still need the pre-baked integrations, okay, especially for the non-critical systems. So APIs are more of a sales pitch. It's great. Most of the systems are probably going to have that. Even the legacy ones as of today. If they don't have in 2023, I don't know why you are looking at that system now.
But Sam, on that front, did you see any specific callouts that would allow some sort of integration? I mean, I didn't see anything that even alluded to the fact that you could integrate some other third-party add-on into this.
So based on the background of the people who are involved in this, I mean, they came from a very web development background, and that is the next thing that I'm going to touch, okay? So, I don't necessarily call this an ERP, to be honest, okay? It's a very e-commerce system, and we are going to touch on layers why it is a slightly more e-commerce system. Okay, there is a massive difference in terms of how the e-commerce systems are supposed to work versus how ERP systems are supposed to work. But overall, if they come from very deep technical development background, in general, they will have APIs. That would be my understanding, the way it is designed. Okay, any other comments on this one, guys? Any other follow-ups? No? Okay.
No, moving on.
Okay. So here we have some more commentary. By the way, one more point that I want to touch on the previous one. When you look at these ratings, Gartner, G2, you are always going to get 4.95. Okay, they will not make any sense whatsoever because they don't provide the real comparison. They are there to misguide you, to be honest, okay? So don't pay attention to the ratings. Pay attention to the reviews. Who is the reviewer? What they have commented about. Okay, that's where you should be paying attention. So they are not completely meaningless as such. You should be paying attention to them, but don't go by, okay, 4.9, let's buy the system.
Well, we could go into a whole other discussion about how those different message boards review different ERPs and how accurate they really are, but that's a whole other discussion.
Exactly. Okay, so here we have some more commentary. So here they are talking about we chose BizAutomation for the same reasons. Our customers choose us over our big competitors. I mean, which is great argument, to be honest. Obviously, every business is going to have sort of its value prop, and these smaller businesses, they bring a ton of value. But when you are looking at the ERP systems, the workload are really mission critical, to be honest. And if you are going to have the emotional argument, sometimes that could fire back significantly in general because that's your mission critical data. Okay, you might be penalized because of how they are computing. So ERP system in general is far more than what you would think of them as the technical system. So again, don't be emotional in buying these systems. Okay, if you're working with a consulting company, then it's a different case. Even if it is going to be a one-man shop, then it's okay because they are not necessarily selling you the software. Especially when I talk about the ERP software. Any other category of softwares are completely fine. Okay, in being small, but ERP is a very different software category. It's supposed to be a financial software, and that's where their financial standing matters a lot overall from the OEM perspective. So that's my comment on that. Then they have some more comment here. All offer multiple editions from websites that offer little transparency as to what you really get. And again, that's a jab on these big tech competitors. Sure, I can see some problems there, but the multiple editions are not necessarily supposed to be bad, in general, because, if you look at some of the other solutions, for example, Acumatica. Obviously, they have multiple editions, and these guys compete with Acumatica, so that's probably a jab on them. But let me clear the air here. The multiple additions are supposed to be good, and the reason for that is because you have the same product, and then you have the additions that you can buy based on your industry, so you are getting the key industry functionality. Sure, it could be slightly confusing overall cost from the licensing perspective, but again, these guys are going to have those layers as well. So again, pay attention to these things. Now they have the all claim to be SMB friendly, but their product designs, prices, and policies suggest otherwise. In general, if you look at the real ERP system, okay, and SMB could mean a lot of different things. If you're talking about businesses that are going to be under $5 million, in general, they cannot afford to have a real ERP system, to be honest, because of the implementation expertise as well as the internal skill set that it is going to require. It's just not possible, to be honest. Okay, so that's where these solutions have a play, but that is not to say that any companies that are going to be $10-20 million should not be looking at those ERP systems, because after that they'll have far more budget for the consulting, and they are going to have far superior skill set in general internally. But these guys are not doing anything different. They are simply either trying to simplify the data model, or they are trying to simplify the pricing model. That's why they are trying to claim that, I am providing you a lot more as part of the bundle, as opposed to these providers.
I got to tell you, reading these the three sentences you've underlined here at the bottom. First off, they're in a very, very euphemistic way, they're being slanderous. And secondly, I think their marketing budget must be pretty low, because they're not, by saying those kind of claims, their product designs, prices, policies suggest otherwise. It doesn't really say anything. It's not. It's making you doubt the other vendors, I guess, at some level, but it's not making not saying anything at all.
Yeah, but Andy, I think you are going to see similar trend when you look at the marketing positioning of the products that are done by developers. You are going to see very similar trend in general.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, they are trying to do whatever they can do to win, and that's completely fair. There's no problem at all. It's just that you, as a buyer, need to figure out how to pay attention to that.
Yeah. Not to drink the Kool-Aid.
All right, guys. So some more commentary here. Why we don't sell by the app or edition like everyone else. So here they are talking about horizontally focused and intended to appeal to the noble assumption that if you need less, or you should pay less, but this approach adds layers upon layers of complexity, delighting clever MBAs. Please stop, okay? Don't do that. Okay, always on the hunt for new and creative ways to extract more income from a business model. By the way, the customers that you are selling to are most likely going to be MBA. So who are you trying to call out here? But that's not how MBA is supposed to work, okay? Everybody has their own business model, the way they work, so understand and respect their business model. So the problem isn't the concept per se. It's the temptation to leverage it to force the upsell from a cheaper subscription to a more expensive one. That's how sales work, with every single vendor. So I don't see any sort of problems there. Everybody's trying to do that in the market. Even these guys are probably going to do the same in general. And by the way, when you are going to be selling the whole package, half of the functionality customers are not going to use. Okay, so which business model is better? Because let's say if you go to any other vendors who are trying to sell the modular capability and the modular add-ons, that means you are only buying things and you are only paying for things that you are going to be using. So that means they have far superior business model than you guys, because you are trying to sell as a package, which is a great thing, but don't call out your competitors on their business model. In my mind, that's not right.
Well, your last sentence is the same thing again. The only way to avoid a hidden add-on is to flatten your offering to a single version edition, which is what we did. That's such ridiculous, They're making statements that are generic yet specific at the same time, and like I said before, it's close to being slander.
Yeah, it's very common in the development community in general to call out the MBAs, but again,
really,
you will see the similar trends in a lot of different. And I don't know, I'm not trying to call out developer community either.
Well, I mean,
See, you walking that one
sentiment is
back.
there.
well,
Sorry, Dave.
it's saying, the only way you can avoid these hidden costs is to offer a single version so everyone got the same thing. It sounds like the multi-tenant SaaS model, isn't it? Isn't it the same thing?
Yeah, it is similar, but the only point I'm trying to make here is, look, guys, everybody has their own business model. Just don't disparage anybody else.
Yes,
Okay, if you have something,
exactly.
just sell it.
I think the
If there's
sentence before,
value that you are presenting in your product or services,
Yeah,
hallelujah, we want to hear
yeah,
about
yeah, exactly. So that's what I don't like about this messaging. Okay, everybody has again their own business model and offering and the way they like to. So okay, so upsell. Maybe today you only sell out of one warehouse. You don't think to negotiate even. Yes, that's going to be a problem. So okay, when you are going to buy the subscription tomorrow, let's say if you are going to grow, you might not get the discount on the additions that you are going to get on the product. These guys may not require that money, but again, you are paying for everything upfront. Okay, so you are paying a lot more upfront. You are paying for the functionality that you are not going to be using. So in my mind, still, again, don't look for discount in the case of ERP, because you are always going to find those surprises in general. Okay, so figure out which is the vendor that is going to be friendlier when you are going to be working with them, when you are going to buy the additional add-ons. In general, what you can do is you can have a clause in your contract that says that, what, if I buy any additional add-ons, and most ERP vendors are willing to do that. Okay, if you buy any additional add-ons or any additional capabilities, it has to be prorated at the same discount rate that you are getting as part of the original contract. If the vendor is not willing to do that, don't buy from them. Okay, but most ERP vendors will do that. Okay, so again, they are very friendly in the way they work. So don't call out anybody. Go ahead, Andy. You have a joke there, I
it.
know.
No, I read these sentences over and over again, and I'm going, my goodness. At which point you've lost all negotiation leverage. Oops. In this example, the person saying, well, maybe maybe you only had one warehouse when you bought, and now you need two warehouses, so it's going to cost you more. Well, this is all part of the due diligence you're supposed to do when you're investigating systems, because if you can't see far enough into the future where you're going to need a second warehouse, you shouldn't be buying an ERP system.
Exactly. So right, great points. And if you guys don't have anything else, so let's look at some of these screens here. And as I had mentioned in the beginning, that if a system is going to be designed by the software developers, in general, they are going to have slightly superior, design principles overall in terms of the way your data is going to be structured. But they are also going to have very specific flavors, the way they think and they structure. Okay, so you are going to see all of those nuances in with these products. So here, when you look at the overall layers and the hierarchy, and this is where the change management issue is going to be there, and thinking from the data hierarchy perspective, and that's where the implementation dollars is going. So even if you buy a system, let's say if these guys are going to configure everything, okay, for you, but still you need to learn. You need to learn how to sort of keep that data. You need to learn how to use these screens, and that's where the real expertise is required. Most people that you are going to have internally, they might not be as experienced, as skilled. So for them, they will require a lot of hand holding. So if the data model is going to be too complex, they might have harder time with the system, even though the system design is good. So again, it has to be consistent. Okay, based on the skill set that you have and the system that you are buying, they need to be compatible. When you are going to be at $50 million range, at that time you are going to have far superior skill set in general. Okay, then you should be buying a system that is designed at that stage, just because these guys can handle it. So think from that perspective. So here, the way these screens are designed, there is a lot going on overall in terms of the way this is done. So for example, creating work order right from the same screen, I think there are a little compromises there overall in terms of the way the work orders are created, and that's where I guess these guys have compromised in terms of the layers as well. Typically the way this is going to be is you are going to have an item is going to have a BOM. Each work order is going to be affiliated with an item, but here you are looking at very different sales order, in that you are sort of trying to create the work order. So it could be slightly confusing, especially if you want to be consistent with your processes. Most of the mainstream ERP system, the way they are going to work, they are going to have fairly similar data model. They might vary a little bit, but overall, from the data model perspective, from the screen design perspective, from the supply chain concepts perspective, they are going to be fairly similar in terms of how your BOMs are going to be structured, how your items are going to be structured, the correlation between your sales order to your BOM, to your work order to your BOM, all of that is going to be fairly consistent. So when you are moving away from that, what is going to happen is, number one, you are going to require additional training on the software. That's number one. And number two, when you are going to be moving out from this one, then the other system is going to appear as alienated, because now that's new for these. So again, be consistent. And that's where the mainstream ERP systems, they really help, because they are not moving away from the mainstream data model. So you are not going to have as much change management issue, which is the major factor whether your people are going to like or buy or adopt the system or not. Any comments, guys?
No, I think it's next screen.
Okay, perfect. Dave, if you have anything, you can take. No. So here I have some more comments. Overall, they have lumped a lot of different things together. This is the sales order screen. Here they have the planned start date. So they are capturing the work order right on the screen. And I don't know what is the correlation between the work order and sales order and why you need to do this here. That doesn't sound right, to be honest, overall from the data structure perspective. Now here, and that's why I was saying that this is probably a very e-commerce system, and we'll look at more layers, that these guys didn't really have as much ERP background. They came from very technical software development background.
It looks fairly basic.
Exactly.
Like you're mentioning, I mean, I've got no problem having the work order creation on the same screen as the sales order, but it's that's all it's asking for is a work order number and a start date and a finish date, and that's it.
Indeed, it's not about having problem with this structure. I think it is going to be in exploring those one-to-one scenarios.
Right.
Okay? So when you are going to be consolidating the work order for many different sales, when you are going to be doing your MRP planning, okay, that's where the real rocket science is. So here you can have this flat architecture, but that is going to break a lot of different things. For the down, that's where my comment is. I mean, I don't care, where you want to have all of this, but how is this going to work for the other downstream processes is where my concern would be. And here, when you look at the architecture, you look at, I mean, the ship to is very flat. In general, the way it is designed, it's actually done at the item level, which is a very unique structure. So again, why are you going off? Just follow the standard structure, the way commerce is supposed to, the way supply chain is supposed to work, the way accounting is supposed. You don't have to move away. Okay, so here they have done a wonderful job overall in terms of the chart of accounts. But if you look at, and I think last time I had mentioned the comment, with ERP systems, you are looking at that nested hairball in general. Okay, the way your GLs are going to be mapped, the kind of hierarchy you are going to have, the kind of isolation you are going to have, the kind of encapsulation you are going to have with the GL account to your business objects. Okay, that is not going to be available here, even though they are able to fake their way that, okay, I am going to have your chart of accounts. The chart of accounts looks very natural to an accountant, who's going to ask, okay, give me my balance sheet, give me my P&L. But when you are looking at that nested hierarchy, when you are going to be doing those complex allocations right from your sales order, so that you can configure all of that as part of your business layer, so that the accounting is going to be automated. Now, that is going to be a little challenge here, okay, because your GL layer is kind of isolated from your business layer. So that's where the way these guys approach these systems is, hey, here is your accounting and here is your commerce. There is no sort of embeddedness in between. And the reason why they don't like that is because they feel that embeddedness is going to make it unnecessarily complex. Okay, but that embeddedness is there for a reason. Okay, that drives everything. That drives your MRP. That drives your costing. That drives your scheduling. That drives your one-to-one scenario. So if you don't have that, you are going to struggle a lot. Okay. If you guys don't have any comment here, this looks okay. If you look at the structure of the chart of accounts, this is a very basic accounting. This you can probably find in QuickBooks as well. But again, the problem is going to be in those correlation and the correlated hierarchies that you are not going to find at the customer level, at the item level, at the unit of measure level. That's where the real ERP systems are going to shine. But again, that requires a lot more consulting expert in mapping those things. Okay, that's where the real problem is in general. The reporting is going to be very lean. So the only thing they have done is cash flow statements, profit and loss, and balance sheet. If you want anything else, then you have to pay a lot. Okay, because building those reports is not easy. That requires a lot of time and money and the expertise as well. And especially if you're not going to have those correlations inside, good luck with that. Okay, you are going to be building something, breaking something else.
Yeah, if you look at all 4 sections they have there in the top right, they're all generic type accounting things.
Which 4 sections are you talking about?
Where it says core capabilities and financial reporting. There's customer and vendor RMAs. I guess that's a little outside of accounting, but the rest of it's all accounting stuff.
Yeah, even QuickBooks is probably going to have more reports than this, to be honest. So the reporting is very lean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now look at how they have mapped their chart of accounts. So here we are probably looking at the item screen because obviously we have the image here, right? So here we have the accounting and measures, and we are looking at the income account. We are looking at the asset account. We are looking at the COGS account. Typically, you are going to have a lot more layers. In general, when you look at the real ERP system, you are going to have this mapping at the item level. You are going to have at the item class level, and the hierarchy is going to kick in based on what you are doing, what kind of transaction you are performing, and based on whatever data fields you are going to enter on the sales order, on purchase order, how the item is going to be used. The hierarchies are going to be between this customer and this item, how many ever different items you have. They all are going to have the chart of accounts mapped. And typically what ERP system is trying to do is it's trying to figure out, okay, how do I allocate for the sales order based on these 1,000 chart of accounts that I have mapped in the background. That's what ERP system is trying to do, to figure out all of those inventory layers, to figure out your costing layers, to give you the unit cost, to give you the contribution margin. You are probably going to miss all of that because you don't have the traceability, you don't have the correlation. And that's where this is more of the commerce system. It's probably not an ERP system, but they are calling this as ERP system because if you look at the checklist, it's going to check everything. Okay, we have reports, we have items, we have vendor master, whatever. The functional checklists are going to be very simple. Okay, so one of the things that you are going to notice in the platforms that are going to be developed by the software developers, they are at least going to have the security layer. Okay, when you look at the platform that are going to be designed by shop floor owners, they cannot think about this particular data modeling, just because they don't have as deep data modeling background or the database background or the software development background. That's why you are not going to see as many security layers as you are going to see in a platform developed by your software developers or the architect. So here we have some role-based dashboards, but again, that's very lean in general. Even if you are going to look at Acumatica, they are probably going to have 500 different ways of setting these permissions and enabling the workflows as well as the dashboards. And this is very critical because you are looking at the financial information. Okay, you are trying to limit at the field level whether you want to show this to your AP, or do you want to show this to your AR? Do you want to show this to your controller? Do you want to show this to your CFO? And you will require a lot of granularity. Okay, if they make it too complex, number one, the data model is going to be very complex. It may require far more processing power in general in the background. So you require, expensive hardware. So they are trying to cut down on that. So again, it's very lean, and again, average buyer is not going to understand these things because, on functional checklist, it's going to be okay. Security there, role-based security there. Okay, so some more comments here. This is coming from 2022. Their business model is unlike any other cloud ERP we saw. Product is excellent. Documentation could be better. So documentation is another area. Data center, documentation. Those two areas where products are going to cut a lot of corners. So documentation is not good. That's what users are complaining. And by the way, this is not only on this review. You are going to find this on most reviews. So see the trend there. This is the second review that we have. Small business, warehouse manager, 50 or fewer employees, right target market. There is no documentation, training material, or installation manual. Okay, they are cutting corners. They like to code. Okay, they are developers, so they are not going to document as much. But the quality of your documentation and quality of your code both are equally important for your ERP system and the data center. Now, overall, this review is from 2018. Here they are saying, as a wholesale distributor of seals and gaskets with over 300K line items, we have been very pleased with BizAutomation and its very comparable operation to NetSuite at a third of the cost, and that's the value that they are paying 1/3. So obviously they are going to like that, and they are able to process 300K line items, which is commendable, guys. No questions about that. But again, I don't think they have as many layers, and that's why they are able to process with the kind of infrastructure that they have. So again, don't compare this with NetSuite. NetSuite is a very different animal. The kind of traceability that NetSuite is going to provide is very different. The kind of business models that NetSuite can support is very different. So it's not a one-to-one comparison, but you get what you pay for.
No question.
So guys, we have 3 minutes. Do you want to cover more reviews, or do you have comments? Comments?
Sure, let's do comments. I mean, all the reviews are going to be, these are getting older too, the reviews. So do you have any comments, Dave?
I'll let you kick things off. I appreciated that spirit that you walked into this the closing comments with. So
well, I'm gonna tell them their joke. You guys ready?
Yeah, fire away.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this guy, he walks into the doctor's office. He sits down and he goes, "Man, I can't even sleep at night. I'm dreaming. I'm 1 minute that I'm a TP, and the next minute I'm dreaming I'm a wigwam. I think I'm having a breakdown." And the doctor says, "Well, I'm a dentist. Why did you come in here?" He goes, "Well, because first off," he says, I got it wrong. I'm blending two jokes together. I screwed it up. So the guy walks into the doctor's office and he says, "Dreaming that I'm a moth." He goes, "I'm a dentist. Why'd you come in here?" And he goes, "Well, your light was on."
Andy.
I'll tell you the other one another day.
By the way, Andy, you are on fire today because 2 new jokes, right? Most of the time. 2 new jokes in one show, Andy.
Okay, I'll tell you the other one right now. He goes into the doctor and he says, Doctor, I'm all." He goes, "You know what? I'm dreaming that I'm a wigwam, and next minute I'm dreaming I'm a teepee." He goes, "Calm down, you're."
All right, guys. I mean, we have 1 minute. Do you want to cover this comment? Dave, do you want to touch on this one?
Sure. Yeah. Anders jumping in, Anders Green, regarding the marketing approach. I agree with Sam that overly focused on features is seen often outside the main players. This misses that people, processes, and solving business problems can ultimately be more important than the tech.
Depends who you're talking to, of course, but yeah. I think Anders is dead on.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And another comment from Anders regarding the item GL mapping, 1 layer feature. I didn't see there was the ability to have different sets of GL connections for the same item in different warehouses and locations. The GL example screen did show accounts for different locations, though settable elsewhere. I'm not sure if you saw any other screenshots anywhere, Sam, to answer that, but
even if they
like what Sam said at the beginning, I think this system is it's to do with wholesale distribution and probably e-commerce a little bit, and it's got some flavors over here and some flavors over here, but I'm not sure if it's a true ERP. But you never know in a little quick look like this, for sure.
Exactly, and they might be able to hack their way in accomplishing these things, to be honest, okay? But when you get into those nuances of the scenarios where you are performing, let's say, landed cost, where you are doing the allocation based on the warehouse and location, as Anders said, you will struggle with those things because you have to work hard. It's not going to be as natural because it's not really designed from the scratch for all of those GL mappings as well as the data structure.
Yep.
More comments, guys?
No, I feel like we kind of covered it throughout.
And you don't want to hear any more jokes.
We can handle one more new joke, Andy, if you want. Okay. No more doctors. No more bar.
No more bar jokes. No.
Awesome, guys. So that's it for today. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another solution or the vendor. On that note, thanks everyone for tuning in tonight.
Thanks everybody. Thanks
everybody.
Sam. Thanks. Nice to see you, Dave.
Thanks, guys.
Yep, you as well, Andy.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Dave Chrysler, head over to thechrysler.club. It's THECHRYSLER.CLUB. If you want to learn more about Andy Pratico, head over to essoft.com. It's ESSOFT.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to get you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.